Anaya, a 12-year-old girl, was adopted into a cruel family after losing her parents at a young age. Kamla, her adoptive mother, and Raghu, her husband, took Anaya in, not out of kindness, but to use her as a servant. From the moment she arrived, they made her life unbearable. They starved her, beat her for the smallest mistakes, and treated her as if she were less than human. Despite the suffering, Anaya kept her heart pure. She remembered the stories her birth mother had told her about the goddess who watched over the innocent and downtrodden. Anaya clung to these memories, hoping that one day she would be free from her cruel circumstances. Every day, Anaya worked from sunrise to sunset. Kamla dressed in ornate saris, flaunting her wealth while forcing Anaya to wear ragged clothes and sleep on a thin mat on the floor. Raghu, gruff and uninterested in Anaya's well-being, only saw her as someone to do chores. The household was filled with tension, and Anaya bore the brunt of their frustrations. Often, Kamla would withhold food from Anaya, using hunger as a tool to control her. The other children in the neighborhood played happily, but Anaya, frail and thin, watched from the windows, dreaming of a life outside this miserable home. One night, after an especially hard day where Kamla had beaten her for accidentally breaking a dish, Anaya fell asleep with tears in her eyes. In her dream, she found herself in a beautiful, golden landscape where a radiant figure stood before her, the goddess from her mother's stories. The goddess, with kind eyes and a smile full of warmth, reached out to Anaya. "Do not lose hope, child," the goddess said softly. "You are stronger than you know. Escape from this house and find your freedom. I will be with you every step of the way." When Anaya woke up, she felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, she had a glimmer of hope. The goddess's words echoed in her heart, and she began to quietly plan her escape. Over the next few weeks, Kamla and Raghu's cruelty grew worse. They demanded more from Anaya, often refusing to let her rest. Kamla's harsh voice would ring out through the house as she scolded Anaya, and Raghu would complain that she wasn't working fast enough. But Anaya remained silent, knowing that soon she would be free. One evening, when Kamla locked Anaya in her small, dark room without dinner, Anaya sat on her mat and clutched a small locket that had belonged to her mother. She whispered a prayer to the goddess, asking for strength. The next night, when the house was quiet and Kamla and Raghu were asleep, Anaya quietly slipped out of her room. She had hidden a small bundle of food under her mat, which she had saved over the past few days. She tiptoed through the dark house, careful not to wake anyone. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, her heart raced with fear and excitement. She looked up at the sky, where the full moon shone brightly, and whispered, "Thank you, goddess." With that, she began to run, leaving the house of cruelty behind. Anaya ran through the dense forest, her bare feet pounding against the rough ground. The trees towered over her, and the path was difficult, but Anaya kept moving. She felt as if the goddess was guiding her, lighting the way with the moon's soft glow. The forest was dark and filled with sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, but Anaya wasn't afraid. She felt a strength within her that she hadn't known before. As she ran, she thought of the stories her mother had told her about courage, about facing challenges with a brave heart. Anaya knew she was on the right path. As the first light of dawn began to break, Anaya found herself at the edge of a small village. She had never been here before, but the sight filled her with a sense of peace. The villagers were starting their day, preparing food, feeding animals, and tending to their homes. For the first time in years, Anaya saw people who were not angry or cruel. An elderly woman, noticing the tired and frail girl, walked over to her. "Child, where have you come from?" the woman asked kindly. Anaya, Chu, exhausted to speak much, explained her situation in a few short sentences. The villagers, moved by her story, welcomed her into their homes. They offered her food and new clothes, and for the first time, Anaya felt what it was like to be treated with kindness. The village became her new home. The people cared for her as if she were one of their own. Anaya helped with small tasks, but she was never forced or treated unfairly. She smiled for the first time in years, her heart lighter than it had ever been. That night, as Anaya fell asleep in a warm, safe bed, she dreamed of the goddess once more. This time, the goddess stood in a beautiful garden, smiling at Anaya. "You have done well, brave one," the goddess said. "Your courage has brought you to a place where you are loved and cherished. Remember, no matter the darkness, your heart will always guide you toward the light." Anaya woke with a smile, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew she was finally free. Anaya's story is one of resilience and hope. Despite the hardships she faced, she never let her spirit be broken. With the guidance of the goddess and her own bravery, Anaya found the freedom she deserved. Her life became a testament to the power of faith, courage, and kindness.